All right, hey everyone, David Code, the Co-Real Estate Group. I am here with my good friend Aaron Belliston. We met 100 years ago, back in the early days of FIBI, and since then, both he and I have been really involved in development. Aaron, way more than I have been, and we're going to be doing a panel in September, September the 10th, for FIBI, talking about opportunities of how to profit from our lack of housing here in California. So, Aaron, first of all, thank you so much for being on the panel. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. Always love hanging out with Phoebe.
Yeah, awesome. So we got a really interesting topic. I mean, this is a nationwide issue, right? But I think it affects California and probably Los Angeles more than most cities. And some of the things we're going to talk about, I'm going to we'll tease today what some of the subjects will be, and then obviously we'll really dive into this at the meeting itself. But let's start off with SB 9 and 10. That one's been around for a while. What is that?
Yeah, so this is a fun one. It allows up to 4 units on a lot, and you can also do what they call an urban mini split, which allows you to subdivide that lot so you end up with two on each lot. So we can dive into that one. It doesn't work everywhere, but where it does work, it works well.
And then ADUs have obviously been a big thing. In fact, we're building one right now in our garage. So if anyone hears noise, that's what's going on. And that one seems to be up and running. But the new component to that is this AB 1033, which was passed into law last year. Kind of explain what that is.
Yeah, so 1033 is a great state law that the cities have to adopt into. A handful of municipalities across the state have done so, but most exciting is that uh, the LA City Council has put forward a motion to have planning and building and safety all weigh in with their thoughts and ideas on how to get something like this implemented. That's what we were advocating for and pushing for as long as the bill's been alive and introduced into law. So that will allow for the separate conveyance of ADUs. So effectively, when you're building that ADU in your garage, you could turn around and if the timing and mathematics was correct, you could sell that off as an individual piece of property under its own APN. So it's going to be an exciting way to see people juice their returns on their pro forma and find a way to bring more of those to market.
I love it. I think for the right kind of property, it's going to make a lot of sense. And once it gains traction, I also heard, by the way, San Jose is close to having their regulations released. So hopefully we'll see that one.
Yeah, it's a big one. And with ADUs, there's no shortage of new things coming out with ADUs. One of the more recent ones that people are still working with is SB 1211, which allows where previously you could do two detached ADUs at a multifamily property. Now you can do up to 8 detached ADUs as up to the number of however many units are currently existing. So if you've got a fourplex, you could do 4 detached ADUs. So when you marry those two together, 1211 with 1033, I mean, you're just talking about some really, really finding value in properties that you may already have in your portfolio.
I think that to me is a big thing. There's a lot of people that don't have to go out and buy new property and may still have
Yeah, they
opportunity
just get to
to create
amortize their
housing.
land cost over more units. It's great.
Right, right. Well, you know what? Hiring an architect and an attorney is a lot easier than hiring a contractor. So having to buy land in here in California. All right, a new one that I'm a part of YIMBY because, I'm a builder, and they've been really hitting me up hard on SB 79, which really we are such a R1 residential state. We need to start going bigger. What's SB 79 all about?
Yeah, so SB 79 is really just looking to extrapolate value out of all the investment that's being made throughout the state, especially locally as we gear up for the Olympics and infrastructure that's being invested in for the transit with rail lines and dedicated bus routes, et cetera. So this is a TOD related program, transit oriented development, where regardless of your zoning, you can start to hit the density. So if you've got a brand new rail station that's surrounded by R1 zoned properties, you're now looking at getting a use out of those properties at a much greater density than just your single family home with maybe an ADU. So this is really putting all of that density where it should be by those transit nodes to be sure that we're getting the value out of those $1 trillion investments across the country. So that's not yet a law, but it's one that we're advocating hard for, and everybody else should be as well.
I love it. I know it has a lot of components to that that also eliminates parking, which makes sense, right? Which will also help reduce traffic. So it seems like a win-win, at least in our eyes.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, another one that's probably happened already that's a little bit under the radar is what they've done to CEQA, right? There's been some revisions of CEQA that kind of came out of the fires that we had recently, but some of this stuff is now going to, I think, help our building statewide as well. Talk about what they've done to CEQA.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the recent trailer bill to the budget work that they did at state level, they basically put in this trailer bill that said there's not going to be any more CEQA. So you're right. It started with the fire and saying we're not going to go in and rebuild these properties and start hanging properties up or projects for moving forward with environmental review. We're gonna essentially waive that, and this does that on a statewide level. There are some carve outs, so it's we're not going out to the middle of undeveloped land. This is for infill projects, and especially multifamily infill, there's just not going to be a CEQA review. You're not going to be stuck with having to do a mitigated neg deck or running through an EIR, which really removes the opportunity for your projects to be appealed on an environmental review basis. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of how long your entitlement period is going to be and gives you some certainty, which is, as developers, that's all we hold on to is how much certainty do I have that the building of our business plan is going to be something we can count on. So that's a great one. We're very excited about that. It's just
YIMBY
removing red
trumps
tape.
YIMBY trumps NIMBY finally.
Exactly. It's just removing that red tape. Yeah, to your
Right.
point, that's all about removal of regulation to free things up, and this is what it is.
One I know I've heard you talk about many times before is adaptive reuse. Beyond converting old office buildings, there's all kinds of structures that we have that we're talking about. I know you've been really involved in a lot of those projects.
Yeah, we've done some really exciting office to residential conversions where we've been involved in getting those through the permitting process. What the adaptive reuse bill that is at the city now, a city of LA at least, is that it allows the adaptive reuse of all types of properties, not just office buildings. So, and it's citywide. So you'd be looking at, certain properties, flex warehouse space could be a great example where they're already kind of carved out into 2 or 3,000 foot units, and you could turn them into residential loft type space and not have issues with the underlying zoning necessarily, and really clear that path to bringing on some cool, innovative, exciting residential projects. Especially for areas where there's a lot of commercial that's not being utilized, it creates an opportunity to turn it into the much needed housing.
It actually makes that commercial that isn't adaptive more valuable because there's actual residents nearby.
Because now you have a consumer base nearby.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah, so we like that one a lot, and excited to see the way that people are going to roll that out.
All right, one last one for the today. I know we're gonna have a lot more, but I think the builder's remedy I know is something that there's already a couple of projects. You mentioned the one in Beverly Hills. I know we have a big one here in Redondo that could add a bunch of units. Kind of talk about what that is.
Yeah, so real quick, for those who don't know, builder's remedy comes into play when the municipality doesn't have an adopted general plan. When their housing plan is out of conformance, the state says developers can go in, builders can go in, and they can be the remedy to the housing crisis when the cities are out of compliance. So it only plays when those municipalities are out of compliance. There's a handful of them we'll go through in more detail at the meeting, but those are places where you can go in and say, zoning notwithstanding, we can create what is right for that parcel. We can put all the rules and regulations aside and design the remedy that's most appropriate for that site. And the cities are more or less tied because they have not done the work that they have to do to meet their regional housing needs. And so builders will step in and fill that void. And there's been, yeah, most notably the project in Beverly Hills recently won their litigation where the city was trying to fight the builder's proposed solution. And the court said, no, that's not the way that this works. You were out of compliance when the application was in, and therefore this is the remedy we're going to go with. So it can be a great play in the right area at the right time.
Well, I think it's important. Like, there's no one lever that's going to solve our housing crisis. There has to be multiple levers, and just from what we just discussed here in the last 7 minutes, there are so many things. And I think for investors, understanding them, and again, we talked about this earlier. It's not just looking to having to go out and start new projects. It may be converting additional projects you already have, taking advantage of some of these new laws to create additional housing.
Yeah, might be adding that inventory right in your own backyard. Exactly right. So, and it's great because it used to be we'd go with a piece of land to the city and say, what can we do here? And now it's on us to look at all the available levers, like you talked about, and know the levers because the municipalities aren't going to, the planning counter's not going to. So it's up to guys like you at FIBI to keep these ideas in the forefront so that everyone knows what's available to them and get it done.
Aaron, super excited. I think it's going to be a great conversation. I have 1,000 more questions I've already thought about and things we want to talk about. But anyway, appreciate it. I can't wait to see you on the 10th. Again, September the 10th. It's going to be FIBI South Bay. I've got the link below. I hope to see you, and Aaron, can't wait to see you on the 10th.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Look forward to it, guys. Let's do this.
Cool. See you.